22 on an innocent little walk, and a tree just came down out of the woods. And she ended up okay, but the emotional result was something else. Anyway, that's one thing. The other thing is personal property. When your cottages being affected, and we've been fortunate so far, but we've had a lot of trees fall down recently. So Paul is here to talk to us about what's coming to our aging forest and what we should be aware of, and he's also willing to do an question and answer thing at the end of his presentation. He's a longtime resident of Benzie County. He's involved up in Glen Arbor with all their problems up there and helping them. So it's a matter of managing our forest and learning what we were up against. So,
okay, thank you, Bruce, and thank you everyone for having me. It's part of my mission. I enjoy being able to present and inform people about some of the issues with trees and how they can prepare themselves for what changes might be coming soon. The first tree disease issue that I think needs most talking about, we've seen emerald ash borer, we've seen the ash trees are pretty much all dead. The next thing that's happening in our area is beech bark disease. And who has a beech tree in their yard? Almost everybody. Yeah.
I think
beech are being attacked right now by a scale insect. That white powder that you see on the outside of the tree is an insect. It forms colonies on the outside of the tree. The insect is actually 0.3 millimeters long as a full-grown adult. It's nearly microscopic, and the insect is actually yellow. It's secreting sugars that it's processed. It pierces through the bark of the tree and draws sap out of the tree and processes it into a sugar, which it secretes to keep it from drying out or freezing. And so the insect lives on the outside of the tree, and they weaken the tree. They stress the tree by drawing sap from it. And after the tree has been stressed for a few years, its defenses are low, and eventually it will be susceptible to being killed by a fungus. So it's a two-part disease, and it goes through basically 3 stages. There's the advancing front, which is what we're in right now, where the trees are being infected by the scale, they're being stressed and weakened. Then there's the killing front, which is where the fungus comes in. The trees have been stressed so much, the fungus starts to develop and spread from tree to tree, and the trees start to die. During that phase, the fungus, the way it works, it basically eats the tree from the outside in. So it starts to rot the outer wood of the tree, which is all of the supporting structure, basically. A lot of these trees, some are hollow, some that are solid, still the outer wood is what provides the support from tension and compression, allows it to stand. The center part of the tree isn't as crucial if you think about the structural workings of a tree. So once that outer wood is compromised, the tree can be susceptible to snapping. And there's actually the term for what occurs, beech snap. That's a scientific term. Beech snap, and you start to see the trees break. And sometimes the trees will still have a few leaves in the top. They'll a lot of times show a little bit of dieback in the top, where leaves start to be lost from the upper branches or from individual branches, and then eventually once the rot occurs in one location or in a few locations, the tree can snap. Sometimes the trees will completely defoliate before falling over, but in many cases the snapping can occur early on in the tree's progression towards mortality. So that's the killing front, and the next stage after that is the aftermath forest. And a lot of times what happens, the beech are killed by beech bark disease, and they resprout from the root system. So all of these sprouts start to come up out of the root system as a clone, all these clones of the parent tree that was killed. And the disease has been in the continent since 1920. It started in Nova Scotia, and it's moved its way here very slowly into this area. In the eastern forests, where they experienced mortality up to 60 years ago, complete mortality, we've seen beech grow back over those 60 years and grow back to never be the same as the beech that we have now. They're still attacked by scale eventually. They're stressed, and they usually don't have smooth bark and they won't grow to be as large. So a lot of times after beech bark disease has taken its course, as the trees start to resprout, there is some merit in trying to control regeneration, the resprouting of beech, and trying to favor other species that would be more desirable that have the potential to actually restore the overstored canopy. So that's beech bark disease. Basically, as for managing your properties in the future, identify the beech, identify the ones that have scale, and how they pose a hazard. I mean, some trees could be left to fall if they're not going to threaten a structure, and sometimes because you're trying to budget, trying to make it affordable, there is some sense in doing that. But those that threaten a structure, either complete removal or removal of hazardous branches, either way could be an option. And so into the future, identifying all these beech trees and dealing with them before the disease progresses to a more advanced stage. Right now, a lot of these trees either have to be accessed with an aerial lift or climbed. Once the fungus starts to appear, climbing is no longer an option, and it requires an aerial lift, a bucket truck. And so a lot of times that becomes more expensive. And sometimes if it can't be accessed with a bucket truck, sometimes it will just have to be dropped, which could be more destructive. And so early action can be beneficial. Just having a plan, get a few bids, find a reputable tree company that can do that work. The scale, the fungus, you'll start to see black spots on the outside of a tree that ooze this tar-like substance. Those are the spores that are being released, and that black spot is the fruiting body. So the fungus, it lives inside the tree, it's infecting the wood, and it's creating this fruiting body where it releases spores that travel to other trees. So when you start to see black spots with the tar oozing out of it, you could Google beech bark disease and see all these pictures and see what they look like. But once you start to see that, that's a sign that the disease has progressed, the tree is nearing its end. So beech bark disease, probably the biggest thing we are faced with, having to deal with. Who has
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
But how did it start? What caused the beech bark all of a sudden to have something that attacked it?
Yeah, the scale is invasive. It was brought in from Asia. It's been in Europe too.
Asia.
Yeah. A lot of these come from.
We have stink bugs on the East Coast.
Yeah.
You know what those are? Those are horrible too.
Yeah. So a lot of these diseases are brought in, shipped in on material, or they can travel in. They might have been on nursery stock too of trees.
Are they working on a cure?
For beech bark disease, one treatment that's available is to power wash the tree and then spray it with an insecticide. It's limited success because the power washer can sometimes only reach 20 feet, and so you miss a good portion of the tree, but you can get a very vital part, the main trunk. And then the insecticide can only reach so high unless you had a sprayer from an aerial lift, which is expensive, and it's no guarantee. Dan Schillinger has been working in the area. He's the forester the tree doctor, who does a lot of that work. So he'd be a resource, I believe. You worked with him, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We
So,
have to.
yeah. Yep. And so that is an option.
If you did that, wouldn't you have to have repeated treatments?
Yes, repeated
Because the
treatments.
insecticide will wash off.
Are you familiar with how often? Is it
We've
annually?
been doing it every year.
Every year,
Mhm.
yeah. So.
He do, I can interject.
Yeah.
He not only sprays, but he injects.
Yeah.
We have a couple that we consider vital to, we
Right.
build a deck around one of a beech tree, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it's a great tree.
Yeah.
And so we just said, do whatever you have to do. And he
Yeah.
said, well, injecting plus spraying, we've got the best chance, but as you say, it doesn't make a guarantee.
Right. Yeah. We've injected our ash trees at my parents' place. We injected those, and they've lived much longer. there's more proven success, nothing's completely proven, but more evidence of success with the ash injection, with triage injection, they call it. Spelled T-R-E-E. So there's been more success with that.
Two questions.
Yeah.
We've got some little, what we think are little ash trees growing up.
Yeah.
Should we chop those things down?
I'd recommend it, and I mean they're going to grow to 3-4 inches in diameter. I've seen some in the ground zero around Detroit, Ann Arbor that have grown back to about 4 or 5 inches, and then they're eventually killed. So if you can get something else growing, that's a good
The
choice.
other question, we've had some tree limbs broken during the storms.
Yeah.
Just dangling down. They're not in any danger of hitting the cottage or anything.
Yeah.
Should we get those taken out? Do they damage the tree by being there at all? Or?
If they're just hanging and about to break, they're not necessarily. If there's something underneath them that they'll damage.
No, it doesn't damage any property.
No.
It will hurt the tree to leave them in the tree.
Yeah, if you want to leave them in the tree, if they're not going to threaten you, there's probably no harm in that. Yeah, I mean it'd be better for the tree to cut off where it's broken and let the tree grow over that wound. But you know, it's minor improvement for the tree. You know, if it's a tree deep in the forest that's not threatening you, you wouldn't go spend all your money to do that. So. Yeah, the other issue, who has an oak tree in their yard? So, red oaks.
Are there any species that are okay?
I get that question a lot. The answer is yes. Yeah, there are many. Red oaks right now are being threatened by oak wilt. And
Are red oaks the pointy leaves or the rounded?
yes, they're the pointy
The
leaves.
point, hers is
Yeah.
rounded, so it's a
Yeah.
white oak.
White oak, yeah, yeah. White oaks are also threatened, but they're
No, they're not.
Yeah, it's funding is very bad news.
How's concrete?
What?
How's
Yeah,
concrete?
concrete for less, yeah, definitely. Pavement's okay, as long as the trees don't fall, yeah.
So red.
So both red and white oaks are threatened. White oaks are more resistant. Red oaks are very susceptible. Oak wilt is a fungus. It's in the same family as Dutch elm disease fungus, which you might be familiar with, which was about 30, 40 years ago, and that was most prevalent. The oak wilt disease is not as threatening as beech bark disease. I don't believe, and I think a lot of the literature shows we're not going to lose all of our red oaks. It happens in patches. It happens randomly. The disease is introduced by sap-feeding beetles that go from an infested tree, feed on the sap of an infested tree, and go to an uninfested tree, and will deliver the spores of the fungus from one tree to another. The beetles are active all throughout the summer, but they carry the fungus between April 15th and July 15th, when the trees are producing the fruiting body of the fungus. And so the fruiting body, they call them pressure pads on an infested tree that was killed a year before. The following year, in the late spring, early summer, from April 15th to July 15th, those trees will start to open up fruiting bodies and release the spores. And where the fruiting bodies occur, sap will be coming out of the tree. So that's what draws the beetles in to feed on the sap. And then they travel to an uninfested tree that has a wound. So there has to be a wound, a portal of entry. And so that if the tree is pruned or if there's storm damage during that time, that presents a wound where the beetle can introduce the fungus. So the biggest thing we can do to prevent oak wilt is don't prune any oak from April 15th to July 15th. The studies have shown that after July 15th, you're pretty okay. The main research project that showed that was a power line clearing in Wisconsin that was occurring all throughout the summer in a heavily infested oak wilt area. And they found that the trees that were being pruned from April 15th to July 15th were getting oak wilt. And then after July 15th, they didn't see any more. And so that was kind of the litmus test, the study that we now know the time period in which they're susceptible. And so if you do have a tree that's damaged during that time, pruning sealant on the wound is a good idea. If you can have that, if you have a branch that breaks, and say it connects to the tree here, it's broken here, if you can cut it off and seal that wound immediately, that can greatly reduce the spread. However, if you're pruning a tree and it's not during that time period from April 15th to July 15th, pruning sealant is not recommended. The new studies have shown that you're better off to let the tree heal on its own, let it seal off its own wound. If you try to apply pruning sealant, you prevent that healing process where the tree dries out because the wound is exposed to air, and the tree is able to compartmentalize, shut off that area that's wounded, and then grow around it. You delay that process, and in a worst case scenario, if you were to prune a tree, say you did it in March, and prune an oak tree, and then apply pruning sealant to that wound, come April 15th, some of that pruning sealant could come off, and then you'd have an exposed area and a vector, a portal of entry. So that's it's important to only use pruning sealant during that infestation period. So that's oak wilt, mainly beech bark disease, oak wilt. Those are probably what we're going to be faced with. Who's heard of Asian longhorn beetle? So there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Asian longhorn beetle is a beetle that's currently in the U.S. It was introduced in 1996 to the Brooklyn area, and it's slowly moved throughout the country, and it's mainly shown up in urban areas. It's brought in on wood packaging material, basically in pallets and crating, and has occurred in urban areas in Chicago, Cincinnati, Toronto, and Brooklyn. It's started to spread out and naturalize in the eastern, in Connecticut, in New York. There's areas where it's naturalized and gotten into forests and started to spread, but in most other infestations, it hasn't been able to move as aggressively, partially because of its characteristics and its life cycle. It lives in a tree, it creates a large cavity as a larva, and then eventually exits the tree as a large beetle, about 1.5 inches long. They're very slow moving, they can't fly very far. An emerald ash borer can fly up to 2 miles in its lifetime. And it can cling onto a moving vehicle and travel with high speeds. And it can travel at 70 miles an hour down the freeway and hold on to the outside of your car. It also can persist in firewood much easier because it lives in the outer bark, and it only requires that bark for survival. Whereas the Asian longhorn beetle, if you were to cut down the tree and the wood dried out, it would not be able to live as long in the firewood. And so it has, when it gets into an area, it will, especially in Cincinnati, for example, it was found in 2011, and they've considered it eradicated. They've been able to find every infested tree, cut them down, chip them or burn them, remove all the material, and they can actually find the infested trees using dogs. Dogs can locate trees that are infested. They can hear the beetles munching inside the tree. And they've trained dogs to locate trees that are removed. So it's for a while we were very scared about it. I think it's unlikely that we're going to see it soon in Michigan. And if we do, it could be devastating because its main host is branches. It'll infest maples, but it's also a generalist. It'll do elms, willows, poplars, birch, sycamore. Right now, it doesn't get into oaks, doesn't get into black cherry. It hasn't gotten into hickory or tulip poplar. So there are many species that are still okay at this point. And that's kind of one of the last points before I go to questions and answers. The next thing that people are going to be wondering after they take down their trees is what to replant. And the general guideline that's recommended by the International Society of Arboriculture, and it's pretty arbitrary, but I think it's a pretty good gold standard. don't plant any more than 10% of any species or 20% of any genus. So what that means, look around at what we have right now. Try not to plant what's already here. Add some diversity to your forest. We already have abundant maples. If we plant more, if Asian longhorn beetle does get here, or if some other pathogen comes into the continent and starts threatening maples, then we're just going to have a monoculture. And it's amazing, a monoculture that will be killed. It's amazing how hard it's been for people to learn this. There's a lot of areas where all of the elms were killed, and they replanted with all ash. And then all the ash were killed, and now they've replanted all maples. Entire neighborhoods that have been planted in monoculture. And in order to be prepared for changes that are bound to happen in the future, we should have diversity. And some of the species that I've been planting, we have 7 acres in Beulah, our family cottage, where I've been replanting after we took down all the ash around the house. We've planted tulip poplar, shagbark hickory, white oak, sycamore. We have red buds for understory trees, and hackberry. A lot of species that are native to southern Michigan that are capable of surviving in a warmer climate, and species that do not have an invasive pathogen currently threatening them in this continent.
So we can get ready for global warming too, right?
So we're kind of preparing for that.
Right.
Yeah, the effects of that. We've seen the effects on red oak, actually, with oak decline recently. A lot of oaks have been killed by the freeze that we've had. The early springs, they cause them to leaf out, and then the frost that defoliates them, and that happens several years in a row and causes a lot of oak mortality. So it's kind of unpredictable how climate change could affect certain species, but we know it's going to affect some. Diversity is probably the best way to prepare ourselves, so we don't lose all, we'll just lose some. So I think those are pretty much my points, and I'd open up for the questions.
Could you talk a little bit more about the ash?
Yep. Emerald ash borer has pretty much taken its course. I think almost all of the mature ash trees have been killed at this point. The emerald ash borer, another beetle that was introduced from Asia in 2001, it was identified in the Metro Detroit area and has been moving since then. It made its way here around 2008, 2009 was when it was first really prevalent in Benzie County, and it was pretty quick to kill trees, and now at this point the most of the ash trees are so far gone that a lot of the timber value is pretty much gone from them. The wood has started to deteriorate too. Ash are very prone to breaking at the base, uprooting. Wood is not very rot resistant, and the stump is the most susceptible part of the rot. So I run a tree service. If there's an ash that's dead, which is pretty much all of them, we won't climb any ash. That's our main policy. There are some exceptions where if we can tie into a safe tree, a solid tree above and be suspended, we could work on an ash tree. But without that option, without that security, we won't climb dead ash anymore. And so eventually beech will become categorized like that. It'll become so hazardous that we can't do it.
So if we still have an ash that has a healthy canopy, you think it might be okay?
At this point, we have not seen any survival of ash. There's been 0.001%. If you do have a tree with a healthy canopy, I'd say get.
We're spraying. We've been spraying it.
Yeah, if you've been doing spraying, did you inject too, or?
I don't know, whatever the tree doctor recommended.
Probably the triage
Because it's
injection.
pointed towards the walkers if it falls.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. If it has a healthy canopy, if you've been treating it, it's alive. Yeah, that's fine at this point. But if it wasn't treated when it first happened, then that tree, there's really not an option to treat trees at this point. All of them have become infested.
So what happens to the evil ash borer once all the ash are dead now? Is it gonna adapt and?
We're gonna learn.
Oh.
We're gonna find out. It's,
Because it's still around, right?
It's still around, yeah. And actually, interesting little anecdote about that. We treated our trees, and the person we were working with, something happened in his business, and he didn't come back this year to do the treatment. So it'll be 3 years. Usually you can go 2 years in between treatments, but we don't have any woodpecker damage. We don't have any exit holes of the beetle. There's really no signs. That doesn't mean it's not there, but there's no signs of the insect. Part of the reason might be that the population is so lower right now, and they don't have hosts. And so trees are able to survive a little bit longer without a heavy population. I
Maybe
think
they'll cling onto cars.
yeah, it's gonna go back that way. I think it'll be a lot like Dutch elm disease. There still are quite a few elms, and a lot of them do die when they get older. But they have found some resistant elms, and they've been propagating those resistant elms. Ash, it might be harder. You can't, for one thing, they cannot crossbreed American ash with Asian ash because they have a different number of chromosomes, so they just are not compatible. So we can't breed a resistant ash tree, but we could find some that are resistant. So if you know anyone who does have a tree that wasn't treated and is still alive, that's a gold mine. Get it harvested. Get someone to find that and propagate the seed. There's some work being done on that where they have found some populations, that 0.001%, I would say, that are still alive. I think it'll be like Dutch elm disease, where we'll still see some trees be able to grow a little bit. There's a giant American elm on 31, just before the Cherry Growers Association, just past on your way to Travers, past Interlochen. There's a huge American elm on the side of the road that's still completely alive, and we're waiting to see how long that goes. There's treatment for elms as well. All of the American elms, the law diag at U of M, those are all large American elm trees that have been treated and been kept alive in that area. And in Central Park, there's a population of live elm that were never treated, but Dutch elm disease was not able to get in because there was no vector to move into the city because there were no other elms.
No cars?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's another reason to try planting species that are native to southern Michigan. We call it assisted migration, moving species here that are capable of surviving here, that have coexisted with the species we have here, that have been planted before and grown to reproductive maturity without becoming invasive, without spreading aggressively, so they can fit in the ecosystem. But having them here, having an isolated individual, could create a tree that is not susceptible. There won't be a vector for a disease to come in and infest that tree because there are no other of its kind in its surrounding area. So, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful presentation.
Okay. Thank you. I'll leave a stack of business cards here.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you coming.
Yeah.